Hey guys, it's Brian here. Real quick, the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show has a new Facebook group, and you're all invited. Just search for the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show to join. The goal is to further discussion of what's talked about here on the podcast and to keep you updated on what we're doing and what we're working on, which always means ways to help you hike your best hike. The Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show Facebook group. I hope you will check it out.
Even on the best of days, the Grand Canyon rim-to-rim hike, you can run the gamut of emotions. But on a day like this, when you're dealing with the heat, it's a survival game.
Hey there, Canyon lovers. My name is Brian Special, and this is the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show presented by Bright Angel Outfitters. Every single year in Arizona, as soon as June rolls around, I pretty much enter into seasonal depression. While temperatures have already been on the rise, June means the arrival of real, intense heat. And those who try to downplay it by saying, but it's a dry heat. To which my response is always, yeah, so is an oven. Try sticking your head in that sometime. Well, look, the bottom line is that it's hot. Really hot. I still remember June 26, 1990, when we set our all-time record in Phoenix of 122 degrees, so hot that for a while they closed the airport because passenger planes hadn't been tested in anything over 120. Just last year, Phoenix had 54 days with high temps over 110, including a wonderful streak of 31 in a row. And this year, that kind of heat is already showing itself in the first week of June. Well, why does all that matter? Well, because Phoenix is at a similar elevation as the bottom of the Grand Canyon. That means Phoenix temperatures are typically about the same as what you'll find at Phantom Ranch. Now, unfortunately, prime rim-to-rim season in the canyon runs from May 15th, the day the North Rim opens, until October 15th, when services close on the north side, meaning highs for the entirety of rim-to-rim season can be in the 90s and beyond. Not ideal. Now, you can still hike rim-to-rim after October 15th. The gate remains open and the North Kaibab trailhead accessible until December 1st, unless snow forces the road to be closed prior to that. Logistics are tougher because there are no services, but the Trans-Canyon Shuttle does run into November, so there is still a way to get a ride to or from the North Rim. And I have always found November to be the best time to be in the canyon by far, as any lingering heat is gone and conditions are just about perfect. But November is a long way off, and obviously summer is when folks are vacationing or out of school, so rim-to-rim is still done every single day. And this year, well, we're off to that hotter than normal start. Already heat advisories in early June with temperatures expected to top 110. So I decided to do something that I knew I would not enjoy, but I think it's important. So I'm just going to call this, I'll hike rim to rim in the heat so you don't have to. Yeah, I decided to drop in from South Kaibab on the afternoon of June 5th. My wife, Zena, dropped me off, and she would then drive around to the North Rim to meet me. That's about a 4.5-hour drive, by the way, for a full south to north, rim to rim of just over 21 miles. My start time? Around 2 in the afternoon, entering the hottest part of a day where there would not be a cloud in the sky. Here now is my reasoning for that, the steps I took to prepare, what I took with me, and the highs and ultimately the lows of my adventure. From the trail as they happen. Feel that heat right alongside me on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show presented by Bright Angel Outfitters.
Okay guys, so we're here at the South Kaibab trailhead and I'm gonna do a summer rim to rim today, so you don't have to. It's 92 degrees right now still at the top of the South Kaibab trailhead. It's gonna get hotter and hotter as we get lower and lower. The high today, 108 to 110 at the bottom. So the reason I'm doing this is I wanted to show how effective the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker can be, as well as the strategy of starting in the middle of afternoon as opposed to, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, which is the traditional time that folks start rim to rim in the summer. When you do it that way, you're eventually going to run into direct sun and heat for the hardest part of the hike. If you do it this way, you start in the afternoon, the easiest part of the hike, the downhill, is when you'll be in direct sun and the heat of the day. So you're going downhill, it's a little bit easier on you. And by the time you get to the bottom and then start working your way across the bottom and up the other side, North Kaibab in this instance, South Kaibab, or Bright Angel if you're going in the other direction, you're going to be in the shade. And the shade and then eventually the darkness makes all the difference. Is it ideal to do it this way? No, of course not. If you're here for the only time you'll ever be at the Grand Canyon, it's not the best way to do it because you're going to miss out on a lot of the views in the darkness. But this is the safest way to do it in the summer at the Grand Canyon. The best way to hike in the summer in the Grand Canyon is not to hike in summer in the Grand Canyon. It's to come back in October or November or April or early May when the weather is more ideal. But I understand that people have days off, they have their vacations. This is the only time of the year they can do it. It's the busiest time of the Grand Canyon, and it's the time when there are the maximum number of heat emergencies because today there is a heat advisory. It's supposed to be around 110 at the bottom of the canyon. So it's going to be hot on the way down, but I think this strategy, along with my cooling towels that I have all over me, plenty of water, I think that's going to help me have a comfortable hike and also slowing down. It's important when it's hot to slow down. You're not in a race. If you're going for time goals, don't hike the canyon this time of the year. Normally I would be at probably an 8 to 9 hour rim to rimmer going from south to north like this. Today I think it's going to take me 10, 11, longer than that. It's going to take me what it takes me because I'm going to go slow and I'm going to talk to folks along the way. And hopefully we're not going to see too many people who are in trouble and have gotten themselves into trouble because they were unprepared for hiking in the heat. So this is hiking rim to rim in the summer so you don't have to. For some reason, I'm still excited about this. It's always a great day at the canyon. I feel like I've taken the proper heat mitigation steps in my preparation for this, and it's time to get after it. So it's about 2:20 in the afternoon, and we're gonna head down and deal with the heat all the way down to Phantom Ranch. It's gonna be fully exposed in the sun all the way down to Phantom Ranch. There's no place to hide on South Kaibab. That's why coming up South Kaibab when you're really exerting yourself is a very bad idea. But my plan is when I get down to the bottom and I get to Phantom Ranch, by the time I leave Phantom, the hottest part of this hike, the box and beyond, that 8.5 mile stretch where you're just cooking under direct sun in the middle of the day and it's hot and the heat is radiating off of the canyon walls because it's right on top of you, that's going to be in the shade, and shade makes all the difference. And I know it's going to be like that because I planned through the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker. I know that about 4 o'clock it's going to start shading in. By 5:30, the entire North Kaibab Trail is going to be in the shade, making for a delightful hike for the rest of the way when I have daylight, and then ultimately the darkness on the way up to North Kaibab, probably finishing sometime around midnight tonight. So let's get after it. Wish me luck. I'm doing this so you don't have to. But if you are going to do rim to rim in the summer, I'm hoping this is a strategy that you will potentially think about employing in order to have a safe and comfortable rim to rim hike in the hottest time of the year in one of the hottest places on earth. Let's get after it.
All right, I'm just going to try to fill in the gaps as we cruise along here and probably add a little commentary with the benefit of hindsight. The trail was not crowded at the top, thank goodness. Just a few folks making their way up from Point, which is just under a mile down, but no one in any noticeable distress. Now, most of the time, rim to rim in the warmer months means a start at 3 or 4 in the morning, which is necessary but also a bit of a shame, especially in the jaw-droppingly gorgeous stretch from Point to Cedar Ridge.
I always like to say this is another advantage to doing the hike this way as opposed to starting at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's pitch black when you go through here. This is the Grand Canyon right here. This is the Grand Canyon experience. And I feel like this stretch between Point and Cedar Ridge is the most beautiful stretch of trail on any of the corridor trails in the canyon. There are just no views like this anywhere else. It is spectacular. It's a lot for your eyes to take in. And it crushes me that people miss this because they have to start early. I understand why they start early, but it just kills me because I feel like this is the true Grand Canyon experience.
Hey, sorry if the wind noise is distracting at all. The canyon doesn't seem to care when you're trying to record content.
Okay, so we're just passing Cedar Ridge, which is 1.5 miles down the South Kaibab Trail. I just ran into a preventative search and rescue volunteer who's camped out at Cedar Ridge. Again, 1.5 miles and about 1,000 vertical feet below the south rim, and he's camped out sitting in the shade, and I didn't see him, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, and I told him what I was doing, and he's looked at me like I was crazy, but I told him I was very prepared and have done this hike many times. So he was a super nice guy, but he said there's already been heat emergencies on Bright Angel today. There's been nothing on South Kaibab, but he's just waiting for it as we get later into the afternoon. It's just after 3 o'clock now. So depending on how much farther people went down, it's not advised at all if you are not experiencing the canyon to go below Cedar Ridge in the summertime, because it's steep, it's exposed, and it is hot. And just because you have water, that doesn't necessarily solve your problems, because if you're not used to hiking in the heat and dealing with direct sun on you, you can get yourself into all kinds of trouble and have an absolutely miserable experience in the canyon. They see it out here every single day. Very grateful for the preventive search and rescue volunteers who camp out kind of on these trails during the daylight hours and encourage people strongly to not go any farther, or if they do, make sure that they've got a plan, because like they say, down is optional, up is mandatory. So off we go. 96 degrees the temperature is up to here at Cedar Ridge.
Nutrition and hydration and medication. Just about a universal dilemma when it comes to how best to deal with all that. Everyone's different. Everyone's body reacts differently to different things. And when you add heat on top of it all, well, as I found out, it makes finding the proper combination even more difficult.
All right, taking a quick break here between Cedar Ridge and Skeleton Point. One thing that I got to stay ahead of is my ibuprofen. Don't do it unless the doctor says it's okay, though all the disclaimers, yeah, but this works for me like crazy. A couple of ibuprofen every hour or so, every 2 hours, every time I think about it, honestly. It helps keep the inflammation down and the soreness down, and you want to stay ahead of it, because by the time I get to the bottom, I'll beat up my legs pretty good after going downhill for 4,800 vertical feet in 6.5, 7 miles. So you want to stay on top of the ibuprofen, number one. And then number two, you want to stay on top of your electrolytes, your salt, because that's just as important as water out here. So I take a couple of, well, they're called Salt Stick Fast Chews. There's little tablets, about 100 milligrams of salt total sodium in these tablets. So I'll take a couple of these every time I think about it, honestly. They're easy to chew up. They taste good. Lemon, lime, they got a lot of flavors. Again, that's a Salt Stick Fast Chew. And I'll also take a couple of these electrolyte capsules as well that I just take and swallow, because I find this is the easiest way to stay on top of your electrolyte intake, which is so important, because you have to balance the water and the salt, because if you don't, you'll get too little water, you can lead to all the heat exhaustion, heat stroke, all that stuff. Too little salt, you can lead to a condition called hyponatremia, which presents symptom-wise almost the same as heat stroke and heat illnesses do. But it means that you don't have enough salt in your bloodstream, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. And actually, you're about 9 times as likely to be hospitalized for hyponatremia, which is water intoxication, as you are to be hospitalized for heat stroke. So always important to stay on top of the electrolytes. And in my case, I like to stay on top of the ibuprofen as well, because it keeps the swelling and the soreness down, and that will pay off later in the hike.
Well, the food part comes later, but I can tell you I was already not feeling like eating, which for me is common even in ideal conditions. This can be a time hiking solo can be more of a challenge, because it's easy to say to yourself, nah, I just don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do it, as opposed to having someone with you who you're accountable to. Always a big issue for me, as is sometimes slowing down and just taking in everything I'm seeing.
Got to remind yourself sometimes to stop and take a look around, but you really should stop, because these trails are not what you would necessarily call smooth. They're well maintained, but they're very rocky, very uneven, full of divots. The daily mule trains do a lot of damage to these trails. So they're very uneven, and there are many places where you can twist an ankle, hyperextend a knee. It's very, very easy to do. So the trails are well maintained. They're fantastic. Park Service does a great job with them. But in terms of being a smooth walk in the park, it's definitely not that. You still have to watch your step, because it's so easy to get yourself hurt. And this is the last place you want to get yourself hurt, because getting a rescue out of here, man, you got to have bones hanging out of you pretty much. So stop and enjoy the beauty, but be careful when you're walking.
Now, we're descending South Kaibab, which is a significantly different challenge than going the other direction. That's one of the countless reasons that research and planning are such a vital part of taking on this hike.
See new folks all the time in the Facebook groups asking questions like, why wouldn't I go up South Kaibab? Because South Kaibab looks like it's 3 miles shorter. Well, yeah, South Kaibab is shorter than Bright Angel, but the problem with that is it's shorter, but it is a bit steeper, not much. There's about 400 more feet of elevation gain over a shorter distance. But the big reason, especially in the summertime, is you have no access to water at all on the entire 6.5 to 7 miles of the South Kaibab Trail. You have water at the top and you have water at the bottom. That is it. Bright Angel, on the other hand, has the safety net of having the Trans-Canyon water line running up that side of the canyon. So that means that there is water seasonally. In the summertime, definitely, if it's turned on, because there are pipeline breaks and it can shut off for with no advance warning. But there is water at the bottom. There's water at Havasupai Gardens. There's water at the 3 Mile Rest House, and there's water at the 1.5 Mile Rest House. So it's a safety net of having water available if you happen to run out or you need to get yourself wet, whatever the situation might be. You want to have access to water, especially if you have never been in the canyon before and if you have not ascended South Kaibab. South Kaibab is definitely a different monster. Not recommended to go up it in the summer. Again, I'm out here all the time, and I would not go up South Kaibab in the summertime in the middle of the day. If it's after dark, yeah, I'll still do it, but I know how to manage my water. So unless you have experience in the canyon, definitely do not go up South Kaibab in the summertime.
Another thing about South Kaibab, it is almost completely exposed. There's very little shade available anywhere. Bright Angel, on the other hand, can be almost totally shaded a couple of hours before sunset for the difficult 4.5 mile stretch from Havasupai Gardens to the rim. And I cannot emphasize enough what a difference it makes hiking in shade versus direct sun, especially when you're climbing and working so hard. It doesn't have to be summer for that to be the case either. For me, anything over 70 is when I start to struggle with direct sun, so I'll just about always do what I can to avoid it. So please use the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker. It's our free tool so you can see when and where you will have shade on any Grand Canyon hike at any time of any day of the year. That's at our website, brightangeloutfitters.com. Look for the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker there. Back on the trail, we're at the 3 Mile Point, Skeleton Point, just over 2,000 vertical feet below the rim.
You get to Skeleton Point, you have your first look at the Colorado River, running green today down there, still way, way down there. I'm doing okay so far. I feel like I was prepared for this. I think mindset's a big part of it. I knew that it was going to be a brutally hot day, and so I prepared myself mentally for that as well as physically with the cooling towels, the cold water, the ice packs. I feel like I've done everything that I really can to be ready for the heat, but it's the mental part of it, knowing it's going to be hot, as opposed to maybe it catches you by surprise. You come here expecting to have this incredible hike in nice cool temperatures like it is more often than not on the rim, and then you get down below the rim and you realize it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and oh my gosh, it's a heat advisory kind of day, and you're not mentally prepared for it, and it just wipes you out because you're not ready to deal with that direct sun just beating down on you. So I think being prepared mentally to do a challenging hike like this on a hot day is just about as important as being physically prepared for it, because you know what to expect, or you know what you're walking into, as opposed to being surprised. That's no fun.
Well, much to my surprise, I next saw 2 hikers climbing up the notorious red and white switchbacks, which might be the most difficult half-mile stretch on any of the corridor trails. Just over 0.6 of a mile and more than 600 vertical feet. They are steep and relentless, and no place to be on a day like this.
You doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. It's a tough day to be out here. Good job, guys. Keep it up. I just passed a couple of gentlemen right there. They asked me how they were doing. They're coming up the red and white switchbacks, which is the hardest part of the entire South Kaibab Trail. And they did it almost all in the sun. There's a little shady spot here at the end, but they looked like they were pretty beaten up, but they looked like they were doing okay. So I don't know how far down they were, how far down they went, but they've got a long way to go still in the heat, 96 degrees and direct sun. So I hope they make it out okay. They look like they're doing all right, so I think they will, but you never know when the heat's going to catch up with you. Red and white switchbacks are tough, man. They are tough to come up even in the nice weather. I remember coming up the red and whites at the end of my rim to rim, my 1 day rim to rim back in November when the weather was beautiful. And I remember coming up these, finishing off the hike. You're just about 3 miles or so from the top, and you've already gotten about, man, at that point, 39 or 40 miles on my legs already at that point. Been out there for 16, 17 hours. And then you're coming up these red and whites, and I remember uttering more 4-letter words than my mother would be happy with. Let's put it like that. The blanking red and whites is what they become at that point. Quite a challenge, but one of the coolest and most satisfying parts of South Kaibab.
Now, the temperature differential as you descend deeper into the canyon can be jarring, up to 5 degrees per 1,000 vertical feet. Sure enough, at the bottom of the red and whites, with no breeze whatsoever, I was noticing quite a difference.
The temperature is now 101 degrees as we get closer to tip-off. And I can tell you, I'm starting to feel it. I'm definitely slowing down even more than I already was. I already was going really slow because that's part of the plan today. Part of the heat mitigation strategy is to hike slow, and that is much slower than my normal pace. So I'm going to slow it down even more here. And it's just going to be one of those things where I'm going to accept that I'm going to get to the North Rim when I get to the North Rim. This is no time to be trying to set personal records, PRs, personal bests. Not this time of year. Heck no. Maybe in November when it's cool all day to cold. Man, that sounds good right now. But it's 101 degrees. Not feeling awesome. I have been feeling good, but I'm not feeling great. A little bit of a headache and just feel a little bit sluggish. Nothing serious. Drinking some water, had some more electrolytes, but just not feeling too chipper. And sure enough, I checked that temperature and it was triple digits for the first time. So I guess that's, some arbitrary magic barrier that I just broke through and my body's reacting to it. I don't know, but I'm going to stop at tip off and I'm going to actually go hang out in the shade shelter, the storm shelter that they have there. And I'm going to have something to eat and just kind of regroup. Again, I'm just not going to try to go fast today. And I keep telling you that because I have to keep telling myself that, because I'm an incredibly competitive person, especially with myself. And so I don't like going slower than I usually do. But this was the strategy from the beginning, to hike wet the best you can, to hike slow, and to do whatever I can to mitigate the heat that I'm facing. It's a survival game. Even on the best of days, the Grand Canyon rim to rim hike, you can run the gamut of emotions, the highs and the lows. But on a day like this, when you're dealing with the heat, man, it's a whole new variable that you have to consider. So I'm learning. It's always a learning process in the canyon, no matter how many times you've done it. Always learning something new about yourself. Always learning something new about your body and how your body reacts to certain conditions. And my body, I've known forever that I don't like the heat and the direct sun, and that's exactly what I'm in the middle of right now. So I shouldn't be surprised that I don't feel as great as maybe I think I should be feeling. So I'm going to try to cut myself some slack here, and I'm going to trudge on to the tip-off, which I can see off in the distance, and we're going to take a break there and reassess and figure out where we're at emotionally, physically, all that good stuff, because we still have a long way to go. But again, the whole point of this is to not be doing the hard parts of the hike in these conditions, because this is the easy part. It's still hard on your body going down South Kaibab or going down North Kaibab or going down Bright Angel. It's still beating your legs up. It's not like you're just walking down a gentle slope. This will take a lot out of you, the downhill will. So the point is doing this, still the easiest part of the hike, when temperatures and conditions are like this, because I wouldn't want to be going up like this. I don't know if I would make it. So I'm putting this part in the bank, and then by the time we get to the harder parts of the hike, the hottest sections of the hike, we will have shade, and then we'll have darkness for the climb up North Kaibab, and this will have paid off. At least that's what I'm continuing to tell myself. All right, we'll check in at tip-off.
Well, no sooner had I stepped out of the sun and into the shelter at tip-off than I heard a couple of voices coming down the trail. And sure enough, here came a pair of trail runners, Victor and his 20-ish son, Reiner, who would take a short break alongside me as they headed toward a steak dinner at Phantom Ranch, and validated the feeling a lot of us have. The trail runners and ultramarathoners, they are just built different.
Father and son in the canyon on the hottest day of the year so far. What are you guys doing? What's the plan today?
This morning we went up to the South Rim. We have a group of us, 6 of us, father, sons, and everyone kind of went their own pace. We got up there early, got up at 3:30, yeah. Left 4:15. We good timing, under sub 4 to get up to the top. Chilled, had 2 meals, some water, ice cream, and now we're heading down to catch a steak dinner at 5.
Sounds good. You guys handle the heat pretty well, you think?
Yeah, the second day I feel a little more acclimated than yesterday. Yesterday was rough. It's hot, but body feels okay. Yeah, just the sun on the head's a little rough, but just a couple miles to go.
Just a couple miles to go, 1,600 vertical feet, 108 degrees. Sounds like nothing, right?
Yeah, it's a piece of cake.
After the father and son left to try and make dinner, it was time for me to take account of where I was.
All right, sitting here in the shelter at the tip-off, and it's 108 degrees still in the direct sun, hottest part of the day. It's 4:36, so it's 2 hours and 11 minutes after I started from the South Kaibab trailhead. And for a little perspective on that, my goal is to get from South Kaibab trailhead to the Black Bridge at the bottom of the canyon in under 2 hours. Well, I'm at 2 hours and 11 minutes sitting here at tip-off, and I still have 2.1 miles and 1,600 feet of elevation to go to get to Black Bridge. So that gives you an idea of the pace that I'm on, significantly slower than what it would be if the weather were good. But again, this is all part of the plan. I've had to, force myself, go slow. I know that if I go too fast, I'm going to crash. I'm going to get nauseous. I'm going to overheat. 51 years old. I don't handle the heat the way that I used to. So I'm just trying as hard as I can to put the brakes on and to be smart. So I don't feel great, but I will say I felt worse in the canyon before. So I'm looking forward to getting to the bottom because the shade is going to really, I think once I get to Phantom, for the entire way after that, it's going to be shade, and then it's going to be darkness for the climb out on North Kaibab. And that's okay. If it takes me 10 or 11 hours instead of 8 hours like it usually would, big deal. I'm okay with that because, again, this is all about learning how to handle the heat and hiking in the heat. And I still think at the end of the day, my number one takeaway is going to be don't do it in the heat. But at least I'm trying to figure out ways to do it comfortably. So far, let's talk a little bit about the gear that I've worn. I've got this hoodie that you've seen on, this hood from Mission, which is the famed cooling company. I don't think it's great. It dried extremely fast. It's supposed to be a cooling towel that you get wet. It lasted for probably a mile before I checked, and it was pretty dry. Now, these Frog Togs, on the other hand, this is a Frog Tog Mini, and this is a regular Frog Tog chili pad is what they're called. And this is still cold and damp. It's made out of this material called PVA. So you want to look for PVA material because it's like a chamois kind of material. It gets wet and it absorbs your sweat and it keeps you cool. This thing is still cool to the touch. And the headband that I have is still cool to the touch for the most part as well. So would not recommend the Mission towel. Would highly recommend the Frog Tog. The Frog Tog chili pad, the full-size towel, and the Frog Tog Mini if you want to use that to wrap it around certain parts of your body, like your head, your arms, whatever the case may be, even your neck. Frog Togs, so far 10 out of 10. I would call them game changers because they still feel cool and wet and great. You can't really keep yourself wet coming down South Kaibab. Number one, it's a dry heat. And it's a heat. It's a hot, dry heat that we have today. So everything dries out very quickly. And on top of that, there's no water anywhere. So you can't get yourself wet and hike wet, as so many people say to do. I'll be able to do that once I get down to the river and to Bright Angel Creek and for the second part of this hike. But down South Kaibab, you're completely out of luck. So already starting to rejuvenate. Going to have a Snickers bar here and have some water, have some electrolytes, and then get back on the trail and do the last 2.1 miles and 1,600 vertical feet to the Colorado River. And I think things weather-wise are going to start getting a lot better from that point on.
Well, I do have to mention the Bright Angel Outfitters Rim to Rim Pack, which I was using for probably the 10th time or so. We've been getting a lot of comments about not just the front pockets, but the fully insulated pocket as well. And sure enough, even at 108 degrees and more than 2 hours into my hike, I finally saw and felt what all the fuss was about.
Here's the thing with this Bright Angel Outfitters Rim to Rim Pack that I have. It has a fully insulated pocket. And that makes all the difference, because 2 hours and 10 minutes and 108 degrees, and I still have in my bladder, I still have solid ice in there. Solid ice. I've got a couple of ice packs that are still ice cold. My apples are still cold. And most importantly, my Snickers bar is still cold. So we're going to go with the Snickers. But again, fully insulated pocket on the Bright Angel Outfitters Rim to Rim Pack. Highly recommend. People have been talking about this, and now I see what they were talking about. It keeps everything cold on a hot day like this. I don't have warm water to drink. My candy bars are cold. Everything is cold, even though it's 108 degrees outside. So this is a bonus and something you don't typically find in full-size day packs like this. So the front shoulder straps, the pockets on the front shoulder straps are incredible, but the insulated pocket, man, that's incredible as well, because keeping things cold on a hot day like this makes life all that much better. And this Snickers bar that I have, even though I've been in the sun for over 2 hours, it's frozen solid.
Now, the Park Service recommends you avoid hiking in the heat of the day, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and that if you feel nauseous, dizzy, or tired, to stop, rest, and slowly eat and drink until you start feeling better. And they say that can take an hour or longer.
That's basically where I was when I got here. Not feeling so hot, feeling a little bit nauseous, maybe starting to get a little bit of a headache, and just kind of tired and beat up with the sun just pounding down on me. And so that's what I did. I have never been in the shelter before to take a break, but because of the temperature today, 108 degrees, I came in here, I took my break, I had a full Snickers bar, I drank a lot of water, I had some electrolytes, I just rested, and now I feel good and ready to take on the rest of this hike.
So down I went, not necessarily enjoying myself, but making the best of it.
If it looks like I'm not having the most fun I've ever had in my life, it's because I'm not. But feeling okay, just trying to, again, I'm going to keep saying it, take it slow. This is no time for an ego to get in the way of common sense and just being smart and realizing that your body is not meant to operate in heat like this. So just go slow, hike wet, drink water, take electrolytes. Probably be all right.
Another heat mitigation tool you might not think of as a heat mitigation tool, trekking poles. Anything that helps lessen exertion is helpful on days like this.
People ask all the time about trekking poles. If you've listened to me for any amount of time, you know my feelings on that. I will not be in the canyon without them. My first ever time down South Kaibab, I did it without poles. And by the time I got to the river, my legs were shot, and it made for a long climb out Bright Angel that day. So using pole, I've used poles from then on out. They take so much off of your legs, the pounding your legs take on the way down. Your legs just get beat up on the way down. So if you could transfer some of that energy into your arms, like you do with poles, and just take some of that shock off your legs, it makes a world of difference, I have found. So yes, trekking poles, always. By the way, if you're wondering how much water I bring for a hike like this, knowing I can't refill between the top and the bottom, for me it's 2 liters. I bring a 2-liter reservoir. It always lasts me, but everyone's different. I know a lot of people bring 3 liters. Some people bring more than that. Some people get by on 1.5 liters. But no matter the time of the year, I have a 2-liter bladder with me, and that has always worked, even when I don't have the opportunity to refill, like on South Kaibab, where there is no place to refill your water except for the top and the bottom. definitely a 2-liter reservoir is enough for the rest of the trail, where you have water running alongside Bright Angel for a good portion of about half of it, and then you have water running alongside North Kaibab for a very long portion, about 8 miles, all the way from Phantom Ranch to the Manzanita rest area. So you have a chance to, at worst case, filter, and you always carry a filter in the canyon. That's probably rule number 1 in the canyon. Always carry a filter, because you never know when the spigots that are connected to the Trans-Canyon water line are going to be out of service. They have breaks all the time. They're in the process of replacing it right now here in 2024. So they're out all the time. So you don't want to be counting on those water sources and then have a break happen and it's unannounced and you are out of luck. And then you have no way to filter water. So carry a filter no matter what in the canyon. I always carry one. I have never had to use it to this point. But at some point I will, and I will not be caught without it, because being caught in the canyon without water is probably one of the worst possible things that can happen to you.
After 3 hours and 16 minutes of direct sun and heat that got up to 109, I finally made it to the tunnel that ends on Black Bridge.
The good part is that it took me about an hour and 15 minutes longer than usual, so my timing is a little bit off with my plan around the shade tracker, and that means I'm gonna have more shade than I thought I was, which is fantastic. So I'm about done with direct sun. I had to wear it all the way down. I had to deal with the direct sun all the way down, but again, easiest part of the entire hike is going down. Now I will reap the benefits of my timing, and I will hike in the shade and ultimately in the darkness for the hardest parts of this hike. North Kaibab from Phantom Ranch, which we're not even to yet. Phantom Ranch is still about another half mile from here. And it's about 13 and a half from Phantom Ranch to the top of North Kaibab, with 5,780 feet of elevation to gain, which is more than a mile. It's a lot. Heard somebody say recently that rim to rim is the equivalent to going down 2 Burj Khalifas, the tallest building in the world, and then going up 2 Burj Khalifas, the tallest building in the world. So that's some context, some perspective for you. I hadn't thought of it that way before, but that's a lot of climbing and a lot of going down, which takes a lot out of you as well. So I'm going to find a place to get wet and finally be able to take advantage of this hike wet philosophy that so many people have, and I think that's going to feel really, really good.
A left turn at Boat Beach had me at an eddy on the Colorado River, and a quick full body immersion, fully clothed, had me rejuvenated like never before.
All right, properly refreshed. That water is so cold. One thing about the Colorado is you think it would be running really warm because it's the middle of summer and it's a river and the middle of a desert environment. But since they dammed it at Glen Canyon at Lake Powell, the water for the Colorado comes from a depth of about 500 feet in Lake Powell. So it's icy cold. I think it's in the 50s right now. So that is cold. But man, once you dip your head in there, dip your whole body in there, that's a wake-up call. It feels so good. So I'm properly refreshed. I'm soaking wet from head to toe, and it feels so good. So now I get to feel what hiking wet is all about, and I can see that this is it's like having air conditioning, because the breeze feels so good and so cool. So we're almost to Phantom Ranch. Stop there and refill the water and get ready to head on through the box. Feeling good and feeling rejuvenated. And we're gonna have shade the rest of the way. So my mood has gotten much, much better. Feels so good to know that we're gonna be hiking in shade, and dealing with that direct sun is over. It's still 100 degrees right now down here at the bottom. Over 100 actually, let me see. Temperature at the bottom is, well, it's only 97 now. So temperature's on the way down. It's 97, it's cooling off. The shade is taking over, and prime hiking conditions are arriving for the hardest part of this rim to rim. So 21 mile hike. We are about 7 miles into it now, 6.5 to 7 miles into it now. So a long way to go, but it'll be under proper good conditions. Taking a plunge in the Colorado, baby. I would recommend that on a hot day. Let's go.
Well, a half mile or so from the bridge is iconic Phantom Ranch. I got there right at dinner time, behind schedule, but grateful that the heat of the day was waning. A quick refill on the water and some apple slices with peanut butter, and off I went again.
All right, just now leaving the Phantom Ranch area. It is 6:30. So, man, we got 5 or 6 hours left in this hike. Got about 13.5 miles to go. So longer than a half marathon with 5,780 feet of elevation to gain on top of that mileage. So a lot of work left to be done, but it's 94 degrees. The hot part of the day is over. I was just sitting outside Phantom filling up my water, and everybody's lining up at the canteen, all the overnight guests for stew dinner. And man, did I want to just jump into line with them, because that sounds so good right now. Oh my God, just talking about it. Anyway, those folks were in for a treat in the canteen at Phantom. If you can ever get down here and stay the night at Phantom, I know it's one of the hardest reservations in the world, but it's one of the best experiences. My first experience in the canyon on a rim to rim was in 1986 when I was 13, when I was a 7th grader. And we did a 2-nighter. We stayed 2 nights at Phantom Ranch. Came down the north side, stayed 2 nights at Phantom, hiked out Bright Angel. And man, what an experience. And I doubt much has changed. So if you ever get the opportunity to stay at Phantom, that's a great way to do it in the summer, because you break up the heat. You don't have to worry about hiking for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hours and beyond in the heat. You just have to get to Phantom, you get to rest overnight. Then you start early the next morning and get out before it gets too hot. That's a really, really ideal way to do it. By the way, super cool. You can hear the creek running. You're running right alongside Bright Angel Creek for just about the entire way from here, from Phantom Ranch area, all the way to Manzanita Rest House, 8.5 miles away. And that's really, you're going to gain almost 2,000 feet, around 2,000 feet of elevation between here and there, but you don't feel it because it's spread out over those 8.5 miles. So it feels relatively flat the whole way to Manzanita. When you get to Manzanita, you got 5.5 miles to go roughly, and about 3,600 feet of elevation from there. So that's when you really, really start to climb. And that's the hardest part of the hike. But getting to Manzanita, you have the creek running alongside you. The entire way, really. It's accessible for a lot of the way. You're always pretty close to it. So bring a filter. If you're hiking in the summer, get in it, get yourself wet, because hiking wet is awesome. I'm telling you, I got in the Colorado, you saw back there, and it was ice cold, and I'm still wet. An hour or so later, it feels so good. So that's a good way to do it. That's a excellent heat mitigation tip in the summertime, is to hike wet. It will pay off. So now we go into the box. Almost immediately after Phantom, you're in the box where the canyon walls just close in on you. It's a super cool part of the hike. Very unique, but very, very hot. Another place you don't want to be in the middle of the day with direct sun. And on top of that, you have the heat radiating off the walls because they're so close to you. So that's why the box is probably the stretch that most people, that is talked about most in the Facebook groups and amongst serious Grand Canyon hikers, because it's a place to avoid. But after the box, you got another 4.5 miles, 4 miles between the end of the box and Manzanita. So, and that's no picnic, because it's not with the walls closed in on you, but you're very exposed for that entire stretch. So that is no fun to have the sun beating down on you on that long stretch either. That's gotten me before, where I got through the box okay, and then just got cooked. And what I think some people call the frying pan. Amy Hedke, shout out to you. I think you call it the frying pan. And that's a good way of looking at it, because it'll get you. It's kind of the canyon's death zone, I would call it, from Phantom Ranch all the way through the box, and then that stretch to Manzanita, where it's very exposed. So you want to avoid that in the middle of the day. We don't have to worry about that today because of the time we started, and because we planned this with a Grand Canyon shade tracker. We're gonna have nothing but shade for the rest of our hike. And then eventually, darkness isn't too far away. We only have about an hour until sunset, so maybe an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes worth of daylight left, and then we'll throw on the the headlamp, which I use as a chest light, and hike the rest of the way under that, but under very, very nice conditions as opposed to doing it in direct sun and heat. So, making progress, feeling good. 13 and a half miles still to go until this rim to rim in the summer is complete.
Not too much later, darkness.
All right, got out of the box, and now we move into night operations, somewhere between the box and Cottonwood, but now we've got darkness for the rest of the hike, for the hardest part of the hike. I'll get out sometime after midnight, I think. So a little later than I planned on, but again, this is the trade-off. This is what I feel like I have to do in order to have a safe and comfortable hike rim to rim in the summertime. So I feel great. Got through the box, no problem. No sun whatsoever, all shade, and now we just have to deal with the darkness for the rest of the hike. But you can see I've got my two headlamps on around my midsection. That's something that I prefer over wearing them on my head, because I feel like wearing it on your head for long enough makes me a little disoriented, looking at that artificial light all the time from your head, and it also can give me headaches. So I prefer to use these just standard headlamps as chest lights, and I think it works great. So that's one of my hacks. So onward we go, and we will check back in a bit, but Cottonwood is our next stop, and we'll get some water there. There's no water at Manzanita apparently, which is kind of a bummer, but that's only a mile away from Cottonwood. So we'll top off water at Cottonwood, and that should be enough to last us for the rest of the hike, which will be about 6.5 miles at that point. So we continue onward. All right, I've reached Manzanita rest area. 7.5 hours into this journey, and still have 5.5 miles and about 3,600 feet of elevation to go. The climb really begins at Manzanita. This is where you've been kind of, I don't want to say meandering, but it's been a gradual incline, about 2,000 feet from Phantom Ranch all the way to here over the course of about 8 miles. And you've only gained about 2,000 feet, so it feels mostly flat. And you really start to climb here at Manzanita. So this is where things get serious, and this is where I'm most thankful that it's dark and everything's deserted. Manzanita is just completely deserted right now. Nobody around, the water's not even on. So I topped off at Cottonwood, and yeah, now the climb begins. I don't know, maybe 3 hours still to go, something like that. So it's been a long and slow trip, but that's what the plan was. It's to go slow, and I feel okay. But I'm about to reach that point that no matter how many times we do it, everyone I think reaches that point where, it's just time to get out of the canyon now. We've had our fun, and it's time to call it a day. I'm almost to that point. I think by the time I get to Redwall Bridge, and then on to Supai Tunnel and beyond, I'll definitely be at that point. My wife's meeting me on the North Rim. We got a room at the lodge, and I asked her to grab me some pizza or something. So I'm already looking forward to that. That's waiting for me at the other end. That and a ice cold Coke sounds really, really good right now. Because now the ice is all worn off and the water's warm and it's kind of yucky. You don't feel like eating anything, which happens every time. Where you just don't feel like eating when you're on this trip, so on these long, grueling hikes. So you always pack too much food, carry too much weight. Things always sound good before you start the hike, and then you do the hike and you realize you packed way too much. Happens to me every single time. I haven't nailed it down yet, but I'm gonna have some more electrolytes here, some more ibuprofen, drink some more water, maybe try to have a little something to eat, and then get the heck out of here. And we'll check in a bit. Should mention it is still 88 degrees here at Manzanita as we start heading up the North Rim. From 109 to 88. That's the spread so far. Onward.
Oh, wasn't I still sounding chipper? Yeah, it didn't last too long after that.
Oh my God. All right. Checking back in. A lot's happened since Manzanita. It's been windy. That's why I haven't been able to record, because the wind messes with my audio so much. But I will tell you that before Redwall Bridge, so still with about 4 miles to go from the top, I ran into a couple of groups that were stragglers, rim-to-rim stragglers. They started at 4 o'clock this morning, and I ran into them about 10 o'clock, which means that they were already 18 hours into their rim-to-rim, and they still had 4 miles to go. So probably another 3 or 4 hours if we're being realistic at the pace they were going. But they were struggling. I talked to them both. They both said that they were doing okay. They weren't in distress. 2 of them asked me to let their husband know, one of their husbands know, who's waiting for them at the trailhead, because they're staying at Kaibab Lodge. So I'll let him know that they're probably, when I get done, they'll probably be another, 1 to 3 hours, I would say, behind me. And then I ran into a couple who started at 4 o'clock and said they ran into trouble with the heat before they even got to Phantom. And that was early this morning. And a couple of the people that they were with had to stay at Phantom. And we're going to try to walk out like at midnight tonight or something when it cooled off. And they were supposed to go rim to rim. And they're staying at the lodge. And they probably still had another, at least 4 miles to go. I'm thankful that neither one of them asked me how long they still had to go, because I'm not sure how I would have broken that news to them. It would not have been pleasant, because they weren't even to the hardest part of North Kaibab, which really starts at Redwall Bridge, which is 3 miles away. So they were still, I'd say, over 4 miles. And man, it just goes to show you that this always happens when I come up at night and it's 8, 9, 10 o'clock. You always run into some stragglers who, are suffering at the end of a long rim to rim. They've been beaten up all day long, and they still have a ways to go to get to the finish line. And it's tough, because you don't want that to be their lasting memory of the Grand Canyon, just the struggle and the suffer and what they've gone through. So I told the other couple, I gave them all the logistics. We talked for a while. I gave them all the logistics about how to come back in November. And they're like, well, I thought everything was closed. And I was like, yeah, well, it is, but you could still do it, because the shuttle still runs in November. The gate's still open in November, as long as it hasn't had a big snowfall yet. And November is the ideal time to be in the canyon, because you can do it all in the daylight, because you don't have to worry about temperatures. It's just cool and beautiful. Fall colors. It's the optimum time to be here. So they're like, yeah. She's like, the lady who's sitting there, she said, well, I'm just going to forget that I did this one, and I'm going to look forward to November. So I hope they come back. But, as for how I'm doing, it's those people put it in perspective, that's for sure. But it's still a struggle for me. The rim to rim is always hard. It's never easy. And no matter how many times you do it, like I said at Manzanita, you reach that point where you're just done. And I'm done. I'm ready to be out of this canyon. All I can think about is my wife picking me up with that cooler full of ice cold Coke. That's and a cold bottle of water. That's what I want more than anything right now. So I have 1.7 miles to go, just past Supai Tunnel. And making progress, probably another, hour or so, and I'll be out of here. And I hope those people, I hope they make it. Saw another guy right on the other side of Redwall Bridge, on the south side of Redwall Bridge. He had pitched a tent. He was in there sleeping. I was like, you okay, man? And he said, yeah, I'm fine. It was just really windy. He's like, and I was nervous about that section that you're just coming from, which is Eye of the Needle, which is the iconic part of the canyon of the North Rim, where you walk essentially on the edge of the cliff, and there's long drop-offs. But it always feels completely safe, because the trail is wide enough that you never feel like you're in any danger. As long as you stay on the trails here on the corridor trails, you'll be fine. And he said he was too nervous to do it at night and with the wind blowing. But maybe he was just looking for an excuse to camp out right on the side of the trail, because he had his tent out. And you're not supposed to do that, but maybe he was just looking for an excuse. I don't know. Don't judge people. We're all going through what we're going through. Hike your own hike, and we'll talk to you guys when we finish.
Well, things went south from there. I was about a mile from the trailhead, but was suddenly overtaken by some pretty intense nausea. Looking back, it was probably the water I had taken in at Supai Tunnel. I don't know, maybe I was excited because it's the first time I'd seen the water even turned on there in 2 years. Regardless, something got me.
All right. Got past Supai and started moving really, really slow. Got more and more nauseous and just stepped off to the side and threw up for 2 minutes or so. Feeling just awful. And now I feel better. Go figure. But man, I got to go back to the drawing board. Because if you've listened to earlier podcasts that I've done, it was last July when I had my really scary incident where I ran out of water and had my throwing up and just, I thought, close to a near-death experience, as close as I could get on South Kaibab. And now, having this throwing up incident about a mile from the top of North Kaibab, all I can say is it's that heat, direct sun combo that has a cumulative effect on me. And man, I think I gotta just avoid it at all costs, because that's my body telling me something right there. That even with all the mitigation, even with all my experience in the canyon, well, it still got me. I still threw up. Mostly water. But I don't know. I've stayed up on the electrolytes. I haven't eaten enough. I never do. I try to, but man, you get in the canyon and, at least for me, and I hear other people talk about this all the time as well, that you just don't feel like eating. And it's hard to even force yourself to eat. So, man, I got to figure something out because I'm really frustrated. I feel like the best thing that I can do for myself, I guess at my age and my tolerance for the heat, is to really stay out of the canyon, or at least just stick to rim to rivers in the summer and not mess around with rim to rim. Rim to rim's serious business, guys. It's never easy. It's never easy, but it's way more pleasant in the cooler months. So I'll look forward to late October, early November. Other than that, I don't want to mess with this heat anymore. At least that's what I'm saying right now. I'm still in the thick of it. I still have about a mile to go. And I feel better now. But I'm really frustrated. So that's all I got. I think that's going to be all the recording for tonight. I just want to get out of here and get in my cabin and go to bed. I don't even want to eat anything anymore, drink anything anymore. This has gotten me again. God. But that is the canyon. It doesn't care. It'll get you. And the weather's nice right now. It's cooled off. Let me see what it is. Oh my God. Well, it's still 76. So it's not exactly cool, but with a cool breeze, it feels really nice compared to the 109 that we had earlier today. But I think that 109, I think my body just, it's like, no. It's like, I don't want to do this. Don't be doing these kind of things when it's so hot. And I think it just caught up with me again. Fool me once, you know how the saying goes. Anyway, I think that's all the recording for tonight. I'm just done.
And a few minutes later, I was able to stumble my way out. 1 a.m., a 10-hour and 35-minute lesson on hiking in the heat in the Grand Canyon. I think it was about 70 when I surfaced, so the spread was about 39 degrees, 109 for the high, just below tip-off on South Kaibab, and 70 at the North Kaibab trailhead. I will say that as much as I struggled at the end, I could not even imagine trying to do that climb in the afternoon sun. Who knows what could have happened had I done so. I was able to get that message from those two ladies to a very worried husband who had told me he had already called emergency services, and they had, as he put it, talked him off the ledge. I told him to get comfortable. He probably would not see his wife for 1 to 3 hours. And I also told him they were going to need a lot of emotional support when he did finally see them. Okay, so what's the bottom line to all this? Well, I do wonder if it would have been helpful to have done this with someone as opposed to doing it solo. Both times I've struggled with this hike in hot weather, I was by myself. Would it have been better had I had someone to share accountability with? Well, possibly. I'd even say probably. But it also wasn't really that bad until the last mile and a half. So maybe it was the fact that the suffering came at the very end that has left such a bad taste. Literally, in fact. But I really think the best approach is to not do this hike in one day in the summer months if you can avoid it. If you can break it up by getting a reservation at Phantom Ranch or a permit to camp below the rim at Cottonwood or Bright Angel or Havasupai Gardens, that'll break things up and allow you to stay off the trails during the hottest parts of the day and instead rest and recover before the next push. If you do have to do it in one day or you want to do it in one day, well, the next best option, in my opinion, is the way I just did it. Drop in late in the afternoon, try timing the shade, understand you're going to have to do a lot of the hike in the darkness, but accept that this is probably the safest way to do it. I did see some folks starting at North Kaibab as I was finishing. That's better than the traditional 3 or 4 a.m. start, but the reality is at some point, those folks were still going to have to face direct sun and rising temperatures, likely on their ascent of Bright Angel, which can potentially be absolutely miserable. So the best option of them all is to do one-day rim-to-rims in October. The later the better, or in November. Those are the months you'll have the best chance of not having scorching temperatures to worry about. You might get lucky at other times, and I hope you do, but at least be aware that if you're planning rim to rim in the summertime, it will likely not be the most pleasant experience. And please do everything you can to put yourself in the best possible position to successfully complete the hike. Research, train, ask questions in the Facebook groups, read the Over the Edge Death in Grand Canyon book, especially the chapter on heat-related deaths. Understand that heat is the #1 killer in the canyon, and then it can even sneak up on those who think they are the most prepared. Respect the canyon, respect the canyon, respect the canyon. Well, those are 3 words that our friend Coach Arnie might as well have tattooed somewhere. I hear him say it all the time. And in his training tip this week, Coach Arnie, our resident exercise physiologist and canyon vet, encourages us all to never stop learning.
Today's tip is another big one, another big umbrella tip. And I call it Become Your Expert. I get so many questions from individuals about what they have been told to do or what they've heard to do when it comes to training, when it comes to nutrition, even when it comes to planning. So what I want to share with you is this concept of you becoming the expert. And how does somebody become an expert? They fail a lot. They try things. They experiment. Now, I would like to kind of help you to speed that process along. But at some point, you're going to have to get on the trails and you're going to have to figure things out, whether it's the shoes you wear, whether it's the type of food, your hydration planning, your electrolyte. All these things need to be practiced at some point. You can't just listen to somebody who you think might be an expert, even me, and just go out and think it's going to work, because we are all different. So what I want you to do, starting today, again, I'm giving you another assignment. You have got to become your expert. Think about it. When you're the expert, if someone's telling you what to do, then the next time someone's telling you what to do, you're going to go, wait a minute, that didn't work for me. Because you've done it, you've practiced, and pretty soon you're going to put together an awesome training plan, an awesome nutrition plan, an awesome hydration plan. You're going to be ready. You're going to be bulletproof, and you're going to have some wonderful canyon trips and memories. I love you guys. Become the expert and make great Canyon memories. Talk to you later.
That is Coach Arnie Fonseca Jr. His contact information is in the show notes. Well, not sure why I'm thinking about Victor Vomit today, but the legendary Canyon mascot has been immortalized on a t-shirt that will probably make you laugh. You can find that on our website, brightangeloutfitters.com. Also, please check out the Rim to Rim pack. You heard me mention it, and it again performed flawlessly. The front pockets and the full-sized insulated pocket, they make a world of difference. Sales of the Rim to Rim pack directly support this podcast and all the other free resources that we offer, like our ebook, A Beginner's Guide to Rim, our YouTube channel, and of course, the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker. Please give the Rim to Rim pack a look at brightangeloutfitters.com. At Bright Angel Outfitters, we exist to help you hike your best hike, whether that be in the canyon or beyond. All right, that's it for now. My name is Brian Special, encouraging you, as always, to go hike the canyon. Take that first step, embrace the journey, and when you get there, whether it's for time goals or taking your time, just hike your own hike. Look around and be immersed in the magic that is the Grand Canyon. We'll see you next time on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, presented by Bright Angel Outfitters.